Hi. So for this video, we're going to be drawing a sphere, a white sphere with full value range using a little bit of hatching, tonal drawing, and cross hatching. Now to start a drawing out with a sphere, a good way to just feel it out without breaking out compasses and things like that is I'm going to have it on a table. I'm going to have a background. I'm going to be doing a full value range in this entire square. To get the sphere drawn, to do a circle, something I'm doing is just doing circles. And as I feel I've got the motion down then I just start lightly bringing my pencil down. And you can keep it super light. You don't have to have it perfectly down yet. Just basically the gesture. So using the movement of your arm from your shoulder, and you can see I've got my hand resting here, and then as I get comfortable, just let it go down. I'm also using an HB pencil just to get started. Now I'm going to have a table in the background, or well, it's sitting on a table, so I'm going to have the line drawn there. And the next thing I'm going to do is I want to have an ellipse for the cast shadow. So my light is going to be coming from this direction. So I have a cast shadow, and that's basically an ellipse. So I'm drawing it the same way as I did this. So working with value, there are 6 levels of light. There is a highlight, especially on white. Then there's your light, and then your mid-tone range, into your shadow, a core shadow, which is the darkest part of the shadow, reflective light, and your cast shadow. To start this drawing, I'm going to basically just really go pretty light, starting to use the side of my pencil. And if my light is hitting here, I'm going to have quite a bit of light in this area, so I'm not going to go real dark. But I'm going to go all over, just using some hatching marks to get the environment in. So since my light is hitting here, I'm doing value shape against value shape. So on this side, in the backdrop, the value is going to be a little bit darker as it approaches light. So as it approaches it, it's even going to get a little lighter. Then as it moves away from the light of the sphere, background's going to get a little bit lighter. That's how light moves across the surface. You can definitely set up a sphere and light it with a backdrop and see for yourself what that looks like. So I'm just going to there's a little bit of light in here. And then I'm just going to go even into my cast shadow a little bit. And now I'm going to start going into my sphere. So one thing you can do is to clean up your sphere. You don't want a hard line. You don't want a hard outline. And you can make adjustments easier in the roundness if you keep any line that you apply really light. You're better off working value against value. It's just easier to control. And I'm going to work pretty fast. You work at the pace that you're comfortable with. I'm going to start getting some value into my sphere. And I'm going around, thinking I have many ellipses going through here because it is round. It is white, so it's not going to get too dark. And I'm just using tonal drawing like I did in my little demo on building up value. Cast shadow has a lot of light in it. It has a full range of value. One thing you want to do is keep your edges really soft. You don't want hard outlines. Okay. So I can build up my core shadow, which is the darkest part, leaving this back end as reflective light. You're going to want to have a little bit of value in the mid-tone range, a little bit of gray, and then you're going to be coming in on this side, because remember, the highlight would be the white of your paper. That's the lightest spot. It's not super white because my paper is not super white. So we're just going to let the white of the paper do the job of the highlight. And one thing that you can do, if you have, say you have a sphere in front of you, like I have this one right here, and you can see it's a brighter white, to kind of trick the eye, to give it that luminosity, to really push the values. You can go a slightly bit darker with your shadows to really push it. Not too much though. So I'm going to start cross hatching a little bit, or hatching because I was doing tonal. And this way I can start controlling my edges a little bit more around that sphere, basically pulling out the shape. Remember, as it goes into light, you can separate your lines more. As you have a little bit darker value, your lines can get closer together. Let it be a gradual shift. You don't want it to be too dramatic from light to dark, because this is an even thing. You can periodically like sit back from your work to make sure that your drawing is coming out the way that you want it to. If you need to make adjustments, like if you see little bumps in your sphere, you know, you want to fix it. When we're working on top of our work, it's hard to see it, so stand back from it occasionally and look at it and make adjustments. It's going to shift from mid-tone to light. This is a pretty high key value drawing. High key is your lighter values. You're not going super dark with your values. A low key means the values are darker, so it would be from maybe mid-tone, mid-range value to darker. You can crosshatch going with the direction of the sphere. Just make sure that they are small marks, not really long. You want to be able to control that. And don't let your reflective light disappear. Your reflective light typically is the value somewhere in here, over here, and then your core value is going to be a notch darker. Those two things are what will really give it that roundness that you'll start to see. Without that, without the core shadow and reflective light in combination with, you know, some kind of cast shadow, you're not going to have a very round looking sphere. So just keep that in mind. Now I have the table edge in the background, and one thing that is a good rule of thumb, if I have values coming down here, as they approach this tabletop, may be a little bit lighter than what I see here, so it may get a little bit darker as it approaches the light. And then I have light. So that is one thing you want to keep in mind. As light approaches dark, as it goes from one plane, changes direction, gets a little bit darker. As light approaches dark, right towards that edge, it gets a little bit lighter. Okay. I think I went a little too dark over here, so I'm going to pull some of this out. In the meantime, trying to not get my head in the way. See the roundness of my sphere. You can use your kneaded eraser to pull out a little bit if you need to. Kneaded eraser is really great for working with values because you can draw with it. Okay, I'm going to work on this cast shadow a little bit. So now I'm going to move to I'm working with my HB still. I'm going to work with my 2B pencil because if the light is coming here, the darkest part is going to be right underneath here where it's sitting on its ground plane on the table. And it will move in the same direction as the light. So it's almost like coming this way, this coming out to here in perspective, maybe even to here. It's not going to come way down here necessarily. Probably actually, if my light's coming here, it may be going further back. If my strongest light was here, it would go straight out. But since I'm having it kind of hit here, it's going to fall behind the sphere a little bit. So dealing with cast shadow, there's a lot of light in a cast shadow. So observe that around you. Look at your own cast shadow when you stand out in the sunlight. Look at shadows on the wall. Look at transition edges. Where the shadow is closest to your object, the edge may be more defined, but there's still a transition. It's not going to be a really crisp line. There will be a transition. Then as it moves away, light goes into that shadow. So you want to observe that. And then as it comes out, the same rule, the edges, even though soft and there will be a transition, if there's light here and this is shadow, you may want to get a little bit darker along that part, but keep it soft. Because that rule of thumb, it gets a little bit darker as it approaches light. And that is basically it. From here, you can clean up your edges, still continuing to pay attention to not getting contour line, because in nature, things are not outlined. They are value shape against value shape. So if you find you have outlines, look at your outline and look at the value on either side. What does it look like? And see if you can pull that value out. If you are drawing from observation, something that you can do is when you do value scales, you can match up your value scales to what you see. And that might help you too. This is a white sphere that I'm drawing, so overall the values are going to be pretty light. I can't have anything really dark in it. If I want to really crisp it up, I have to use smaller, more controlled marks, cross hatching, hatching, that sort of thing. And that just takes time. Be patient with it. Just remember, if it's approaching light, it gets a little bit darker. Have a little bit of value on the whole sphere, except where your highlight is. And then as it shifts to light in the background is where your sphere, you'll see it getting darker as it turns. Get this table straight. Really pay attention, if you're drawing from observation, to what does your cast shadow really look like. It all depends on, I'm drawing this from my head, so it's more difficult to gauge what it's really doing. I'm just using light logic, knowing that underneath it's the darkest spot. So if you have something that you can use, like a golf ball or an ornament, or even an egg, a white egg, hard-boiled, you don't want to crack it, make a mess, that's a really good thing to use. Really good thing to use. So that I would suggest. And then look for the light in the shadow. You can see I've got lightest, highlight, a little bit of light, starting to get into my midtones, a couple ranges of that. Core shadow is the darkest part of the shadow, then a little bit of reflective light. Because there's white everywhere, it's bouncing back into it. Then my cast shadow, the table has some value to it as well. But even as it approaches that cast shadow, it may vibrate a little, it may go a little bit lighter. But the light's really hitting it strong here. And then as it comes over here, it's going to be a little bit darker. And that's it. I could noodle this a lot. Like I said, stand back from it. Make sure, if you have any strange looking, points that are sticking up, or, just use the value to work that out. Okay. All right. Thank you.